Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Health Canada approves another COVID-19 vaccine, this one from Moderna. Due to the recent winter storms of both BC and Alberta, an avalanche warning has been issued for many of our mountain parks. And a Bridge City News Christmas exclusive where we share why this time of year is so special to us.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Moderna is expected to begin shipping its vaccine to Canada within the next 48 hours after Health Canada approved the drug this morning. Up to 168,000 doses are expected to arrive by the end of the month. In total, Canada will receive 40 million doses before the end of 2021. Officials say that is enough to vaccinate 20 million people, or about 2/3 of our country's adult population. It appears as though the new strain of COVID-19 does not appear to have made its way to Canada from the United Kingdom just yet. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, says researchers are conducting thousands of genetic tests on samples from patients across the country to look for it.
To date, Canada has not identified the new variant of the coronavirus under investigation in the United Kingdom. The rate at which we sequence our viral samples is commensurate with the rate that the UK, for example, was sequencing, so they were able to detect in their context this emerging pathogen. But we also linked up with the provincial databases, so BC, Quebec, and Alberta, their sequencing information, and they have not detected this particular lineage and this particular variant.
Canada's Public Safety Minister Bill Blair says screening for COVID-19 at the Canada-US border and at airports is strict and quarantine rules are being enforced. Blair responded to Ontario Premier Doug Ford's concerns about our borders being less than secure during the pandemic.
I believe that the restrictions that we have imposed at our border, particularly as it pertains to international flights, are among the strongest and most rigorous in the world. We are one of the few countries in the world that restricts all non-essential travel from international destinations into Canada. And the Government of Canada continues to enforce and strengthen those measures as needed and as the global situation evolves.
When it comes to total active cases of the novel coronavirus in Canada, there are currently around 93,000. So far, more than 435,000 people have also recovered from COVID-19. In Alberta, more than 75,000 people have recovered. The province says over the past 24 hours, however, there were 1,301 new cases of COVID-19. There are currently 821 people in hospital with the virus, including 146 in the ICU. There are also 19 new deaths reported. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, says news that Ottawa approved a new Moderna vaccine is, well, good news.
The incoming arrival of a second vaccine is good, but it also does not change the seriousness of our current situation. We are now well into the holiday season for many, and I want to stress yet again how important it is that we limit our in-person interactions whenever possible. Thanksgiving get-togethers helped fuel a spike in cases that we are still fighting to reduce today. We cannot afford for that to happen now, when our baseline of new daily cases is 4 to 5 times higher now than it was then.
In the South Zone, there are now 390 active cases, including 146 here in Lethbridge. Across Alberta, there are 17,821 active COVID-19 cases. Healthcare workers across the province rolled up their sleeves to receive the COVID-19 vaccine earlier today. The province began rolling out just over 25,000 doses in all healthcare zones. Officials say 14 dedicated COVID-19 centres have been set up across the province to allow healthcare workers to receive the vaccination. AHS is working with Alberta Health to roll out vaccine distribution for all Albertans in different phases, but officials say that may take several months to complete. The Alberta government has backed off its plan to fully or partially close many provincial parks to save money. The opposition NDP says it was a climb down by the UCP government, which was facing too much resistance to an unpopular policy. Tens of thousands of letters were written to government members, and lawn signs saying "Defend Alberta Parks" began popping up in neighbourhoods around the province. Earlier this year, Environment Minister Jason Nixon said the government planned to fully or partially close 20 provincial parks and hand another 164 over to third-party managers. Lethbridge Police have an update into the stormtrooper incident which made world headlines. On May 4th of this year, police responded to calls of a person in a stormtrooper costume carrying a firearm. The weapon was confirmed to be a fake, and the 19-year-old female subject turned out to be an employee of a Star Wars-themed restaurant on 13th Street North. She suffered minor injuries after a confrontation with police. The investigation determined that criminal charges will not be laid, but a professional misconduct investigation will now proceed under the Police Act and Police Service Regulation. The City of Lethbridge wants to remind you that you have a place to take your real Christmas tree after the holidays. The Christmas tree recycling program will take place on January 9th. Officials say for the past 27 years, the city, along with local youth groups, have partnered to ensure that the trees continue to give after Christmas. Over 1.5 million kilograms, or around 85,000 trees, have been diverted from the landfill since the program began. Christmas trees are a part of what we celebrate during the holiday season, but so is Jesus. After all, it is his birthday. When someone says Merry Christmas to you, does it have a special meaning for you? We caught up with a pastor from Waterloo Pentecostal Assembly in Ontario to talk about the reason for the season.
The birth of Christ came at a time in history marked by silence and absence of the presence of God. And the birth made a big difference in the world that we live in. Suddenly, God sent his son into the world in an event we call the incarnation, which means God becoming man, God becoming one of us to initiate the next step in his saving plan. It's an event that transcends time and place, that turns our mourning into dancing and our sorrow into joy. It is indeed good news for us. And I can't think of a better time for this message to resonate over the airwaves and to make its way into people's homes, accompanied with supernatural peace and hope for the future. Perhaps this Christmas can change the way we celebrate Christmas in the past. It's less about opening presents that provide us with temporary joy, and it's more about experiencing his presence that gives us everlasting joy. May you experience the meaning of his name revealed in Isaiah 7:14, Emmanuel, which means God with us. Merry Christmas.
Sasha House in Lethbridge helps many in our community struggling with mental health and addiction. Along with programming, they're also hosting a number of long and short-term beds. Organizers say they're thankful for financial support they receive on all levels of government, especially during the pandemic.
Grants available in the province, federally, and with the City of Lethbridge, United Way Community Foundation. We've been able to get extra resources so that we can cover what we need to do to provide for safe support for our clients and follow the pandemic protocols.
Sasha House received nearly $12,000 from Ottawa in the second wave of community support grant funding. The Western Hockey League recently announced that they have postponed the Bantam Draft. It was originally slated for May of next year, but has now been postponed until December of 2021. Lethbridge minor hockey officials say that'll be a challenge for the league, but players may benefit from the delay.
Age group, it could really benefit some kids. Like they might have started the season at 5'1", and by the time they get seen the next time, they might be 5'8", just because of their age group that they're in and where their bodies are at. The pressure thing, it's never going to change. It's a huge year, and it's for some kids, it's at this point in time, it's the be all to end all, but in reality, it isn't. It's just their first step of getting part of the junior hockey world.
Return to play for the under-15 AAA hockey in Lethbridge is scheduled to return in January of 2021. Power has been restored to 99% of the 240,000 customers who were left in the dark in southern BC on Monday. A nasty storm swept across the southern interior, Vancouver Island, and the lower mainland, knocking down hydro poles and power lines, damaging transformers. The utility says crews have been working around the clock to repair the damage. Officials say all remaining customers will have heat and light by the end of the day today. An avalanche warning has been issued for Western Canada. The notice from Parks Canada says it impacts many mountain parks in both British Columbia and Alberta. The warning is for the users of backcountry and front country avalanche terrain. The snowpack in many regions includes a weak layer which could be triggered by skis or snowshoes or even a snowmobile. Some of the regions affected include Waterton National Park, Banff, Yoho, Kananaskis Country, and the Kootenay boundary. For a list of all of the regions affected, visit avalanche.ca. The avalanche warning is in effect until December the 27th. The province of Manitoba has been cracking down on Christmas parties as it seeks to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Over the past week, police and public health officers issued 35 tickets to hosts of gatherings that broke restrictions. Each ticket was around $1,300. Current public health orders prohibit visits from people who do not normally live in a particular home. Health officials reported 155 new cases yesterday, along with 18 more deaths. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a chauffeur, someone to drive you to and from work each and every day? Apparently that's the case with many federal government bureaucrats. Political reporter Brian Lilly says in Ottawa, there are more than 50 of those bureaucrats, each of whom has their own chauffeur on your dime.
Unless you're related to them, you probably don't know their name. Even if you work for them, you might be like, oh yeah, my boss. I'm not sure. But they have a car and driver. And I'm not talking about someone that they, a car service that they call up, like a government Uber. No, this is a dedicated full-time chauffeur that picks them up at their house in the morning, drops them off at work, and then waits for them to want to go somewhere else. It's bad enough that we have this for 35 cabinet ministers. We've got it for 53 different bureaucrats.
Catch the full interview with the always colorful Brian Lilly coming up later in our program. It was on this day that the Christmas poem A Visit from St. Nicholas was first published. North Korea releases 82 U.S. seamen, and soap opera actress Susan Lucci is born. This is Today in History for December the 23rd.
December 23rd, 1823.
Was the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
Clement C. Moore's Christmas poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, is first published in upstate New York's Troy Sentinel newspaper. 1948. In Tokyo, Japan's former premier Hideki Tojo and 6 other Japanese leaders during World War II are hanged for war crimes. 1805. Joseph Smith, Jr., the principal founder of the Mormon religious movement, is born in Sharon, Vermont. 1968. North Korea releases the 82 crew members of the U.S. intelligence ship Pueblo 11 months after they were captured by Pyongyang. The ship's commander, Lloyd Booker, after he and his crew arrived in neighboring South Korea.
I can't begin to tell you how happy my crew is to see this side of that line that divides this country in two.
And 1986, the experimental airplane Voyager completes the first non-stop, non-refueled flight around the world. Voyager, piloted by Dick Rutan and Gina Yeager, lands safely at Edwards Air Force Base in California. And born on this day, Susan Lucci of TV's All My Children.
U.S. President Donald Trump blasted the bipartisan $900 billion pandemic relief package passed by Congress, suggesting, you know what, he may not even sign it.
Throughout the summer, Democrats cruelly blocked COVID relief legislation in an effort to advance their extreme left-wing agenda and influence the election. Then, a few months ago, Congress started negotiations on a new package to get urgently needed help to the American people. It's taken forever. However, the bill they are now planning to send back to my desk is much different than anticipated. It really is a disgrace. The $900 billion package provides hardworking taxpayers with only $600 each in relief payments, and not enough money is given to small businesses, and in particular restaurants, whose owners have suffered so grievously. I am asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple.
Ivanka Trump, meanwhile, helped to load boxes of food into the cars of drivers who showed up in South Florida for a drive-through food distribution event for those in need.
We are feeding 1,000 households. We wanted to really be a blessing during the holidays. We know there are so many people suffering because of COVID and unemployment and other things. Today we have someone who's very passionate about this, about reaching households, touching families, and it's Ivanka Trump. So we are delighted to have her serve with us today to reach out to some of the families. Anything you name, we have it. It's a blessing. We even have diapers. So people are able to come and receive a lot of the things that they need in their families.
As health officials across North America warn against holiday travel, many are still taking their chances and hopping on board an airplane. People across Canada and the United States are off to see loved ones during the Christmas break.
Everybody is respectful, and I appreciate that. And no one is trying to overcrowd. They're giving people space.
Supposed to have done a Disney cruise, but Disney refunded all of our money, but American Airlines did not. So we're gonna have a very Disney Christmas. We're masks on, everybody stay together. So yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I don't know, with the new strains coming out, I don't know if this was the smartest idea, but we're kind of really far into this.
After a devastating fire at the historic Middle Collegiate Church in New York, congregants vowed to stay united and uplift each other. They began by online worship for the fourth Sunday of Advent, including joyful Christmas carols.
I'm telling my congregation, blessed are they that mourn, for they will be comforted. We don't have to pretend that we don't hurt. I say we hurt so much because we love so much. We grieve so hard because we have such incredible memories here. We are devastated because there are decades of baptisms and weddings and celebrations and concerts and puppets and dance and art.
I didn't want to believe what happened to our church. So I needed time. I knew lots of people were devastated and felt empty, sad. So what I could do is to encourage people with joy, love of music. Jesus.
That is so nice to hear. There's a group called Christian Concern, which says more than 54,000 children in Norway received care from child welfare services. Close to 20% of those involved Norwegian-born kids to immigrant parents. Now, sometimes those kids are taken away from their parents for simply practicing their Christian faith. That's what happened with Marius and Ruth Badnario, and this is their powerful story.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. My name is Marius, and this is my wife,
Ruth.
We are a family with 6 children. We are living now in Romania. Before that, we lived for 11 years in Norway. Our kids were born there, so it's something new for them to be in Romania. It was unbearable. It's like we lost our identity, our purpose, our biggest part of us.
It's a huge surprise on us. One day when the girls which were in school, they didn't come home. I was looking out the window because I could see where the school bus would stop. And the school bus came and it left and they didn't went off. And I was like, what's happening? And it came 2 black cars instead and turning on to our farm.
That was November 16th, 2015.
This is something that will follow this family unjustly for years to come. It's going to take a long time to heal from this, and it was just so unnecessary. And it's something that I pray for them because they're such good people that didn't deserve this. And if justice was ever deserving, it is in this case.
there was nothing wrong. When they interviewed kids, it looks like the kids just said stuff that really don't make sense.
Like Naomi.
Like
Naomi threw the sentence, "I don't know all the Bible words by mind." And then you see the comment under, she will be punished if she doesn't know the Bible word by mind. Which is not true, that we wouldn't punish them for not knowing Bible words. We don't know all the Bible words ourselves, and it would be unreasonable.
This is as shocking as it gets. You come in, you make assumptions with no evidence to support those assumptions. You take these children saying it's in their best interest not to be with their parents, not to be with each other, because these children are separated into 3 different homes. The baby is separated from the mother while it's being weaned. That is a dramatic thing.
We are here safe. We have our children back. We know how great it is to get them back after trauma. And there is so many more families in Norway which struggles and didn't get their children back. Now it's a horrible system that they are using in Norway, and they are trying to export to other countries. And it's not functioning. It needs to change.
Well, I think what's important about this case is that you have a loving family, a Christian family, a gentle family, who has been torn apart by a broken system, filled with prejudices, lack of due process, a guilty until proven innocent mentality. And I think what they represent is every family out there, that this can happen to anyone.
So nice to see that the family was reunited. We had a winter storm in our area over the last 48 hours, and now it appears as though much of the snow we received is melting. All of the weather details are coming up. We have received a lot of snow across southwestern Alberta over the past 48 hours. In fact, an avalanche warning has been issued for many of the mountain parks, including Waterton and Banff, and it's in effect until December the 27th, so please be careful. The meltdown, however, in our region here has begun with a lot of that snow. Jeanette Rocher, or should I say Mrs. Claus, is here now with the weather details. Mrs. Claus, should we maybe stock up on some windshield washer fluid if we're planning on doing some driving this Christmas?
Yeah, that might not make a bad stocking stuffer. Actually, a little windshield wiper in the stocking, especially with the warmer temperatures coming up. Could be melting some snow away. I'll make sure I tell Santa about that one. So into tonight, we're going to have some gusty winds, 50 to 70 kilometer per hour winds. -1 is the overnight low. As we approach the morning, though, that temperature should climb to +3 and then 8 degrees into tomorrow, Christmas Eve day. Lots of sunshine expected as well. Also some gusty winds tomorrow as well for the 24th. As we get into Christmas Day on Friday, 7 degrees is the high, partly cloudy skies. Saturday, Boxing Day, increasing clouds, -6 is the high. Could expect some snowfall on the evening of Boxing Day, that would be Saturday night. And into Sunday, that should be gone. Lots of sunshine for Sunday as the temperature evens out there at -3, -1 is the high for Monday and Tuesday with a mix of sun and clouds. So we've got a roller coaster of temperatures going on. -1, the average high for this time of year, though. -13, the average low. 11 degrees was our high temperature back in 1999, and it was a freezing -39 back in 1983. 8:27 is when the sun woke up this morning. That was our sunrise, and then 4:35 p.m. is our Wednesday sunset. So let's take a look at what's happening across the nation with the highs for tomorrow. Victoria and Vancouver, not bad at all. Sunshine on the west coast tomorrow. 6 degrees is the high, 5 for Vancouver as they've come out of those nasty rains earlier this week. Lots of sunshine also expected in Edmonton, high of 4 degrees, high of 7 in Calgary. Sunny day across Alberta tomorrow. Also windy, expect a bit of wind over there in Calgary. Okay, so this is where we get a little bit chillier. Mix of sun and cloud in Saskatoon, high of 0, high of -2 in Regina, also partly cloudy skies. Expect the colder temperatures with the wind chill. -20 is the high in Winnipeg, but you know, it's going to be more like minus 37 with that wind chill, especially in the morning. A serious low pressure system is approaching central Canada, bringing with it heavy rains for Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal tomorrow. 8 degrees is the high for Toronto and Ottawa. 9 degrees the high in Montreal. 8 also the high for Fredericton tomorrow. Chance of showers there, mix of sun and cloud in Halifax, 8 degrees there as well. 4 is our high for Charlottetown with a mix of sun and cloud, and sunny skies expected tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of -1. There you go, that is your forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you, rain or shine, by the Gym in the North. Start your New Year's resolution today.
Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland says Canada and Britain have agreed not to raise tariffs on each other's goods when the UK leaves the European Union on December 31st. The two countries have a deal to keep the terms going, but Parliament has not passed the legislation yet needed to implement it. Freeland says both countries have signed a memorandum of understanding to head off tariffs. Canada's economic growth slightly exceeded expectations in October. Our GDP climbed 0.4% for the month. Economists were expecting 0.3%. Both goods-producing and service-producing sectors were up overall. Stats Canada noted, however, that manufacturing dropped 0.8% after 5 months of growth. That was largely as a result of lower inventory. Accommodation and food services dropped for the second straight month, recording a decrease of 3.9%. Volkswagen is recalling more than 105,000 Beetles. The reason? They have faulty airbags that can explode and hurl shrapnel. The recall covers Beetles from 2012 through 2014 model years, which have front driver's airbags made by Takata. The Japanese company used volatile ammonium nitrate to create a small explosion to inflate the bags upon impact. 27 people have reportedly been killed around the world by exploding inflators. General Motors is having a recall of its own. This one is tied in with a seatbelt issue. The GM recall is for close to 840,000 vehicles in the United States. The automaker says seatbelt brackets may not have been secured properly to the 2019 through 2021 model years. Vehicles affected include the 2012 and 2013 Buick Regal, the 2013 Chevy Malibu, and the 2010 through 2013 Buick LaCrosse. GM does not know of any crashes or injuries resulting from the issue. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 41 points in the day to finish at 17,593. The Dow was up 114 points to 30,129. The S&P 500 was up 2 points to 3690, and the Nasdaq was down 36 points on the day to 12,771. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.04 to 48.06 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 17 cents to 261 US. Gold was down 65 cents to 1872.24 US an ounce. And silver was even on the day at 25.54 US an ounce. Wheat is at $274 per metric ton, barley's at $275, canola's at $6.28, and corn is at $298 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.28 to $114.73, feeder cattle were up 38 cents to $140.28, and lean hogs were up $1.83 to $67.85. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.83 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Moderna is expected to begin shipping its vaccine to Canada within the next 48 hours after Health Canada approved the drug this morning. Up to 168,000 doses are expected to arrive by the end of the month. In total, Canada will receive 40 million before the end of 2021. Christmas is a very special time for many of us. Coming up, a Christmas special produced by our very own video journalist, Loris Alexander, where you will hear what some of our team thinks about the Christmas Eve and what it really means to us. God bless you, and thanks so much for watching Bridge City News this past year. We really appreciate your love, prayers, and support. As you've heard on Bridge City News, Canada has banned flights from Great Britain over fears of a new strain of COVID-19 which may be easier to transmit. To talk about this in more detail is political reporter Brian Lilly, joining me once again from Toronto. Brian, before we discuss flights, what have you really learned from federal medical officials about the new strain?
At this point, we don't know if the strain has shown up in Canada. What we do know is that it is easier to transmit. And we've all seen that sticky ball, you know, the graphic that everyone uses for COVID-19, the ball with the little, suction cup type things coming out of it. And those, they say, are the proteins. And what we know about this new strain is that it's 70% stickier. The other day it was 60%. Now they're saying, oh, maybe 70% stickier. It's a lot easier to transmit. It's a lot easier for this strain to attach onto your body and infect you. So, do you necessarily get sicker? Are there worse outcomes? At this point, researchers, whether it's in Canada, where we don't know if the actual new strain has shown up, or in the UK or elsewhere, they don't know. We do know that the strain has shown up in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Italy, in Australia. It's been floating around the UK since at least September, and now we're told that it accounts for more than 60% of cases in London, where, as we'll talk about in a minute, there have been a lot of flights coming from London to Canada over the last several weeks.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the banned flights. You've been looking at some of the data that should be a little concerning here, or some of the stats you came up with. We don't know how many or if any of the flights have already brought this new strain to Canada, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And look, it's very difficult to navigate each airport's website and figure out, okay, how many flights came from this city to that city on a given day. Some give you the day before, some just give you that day, some give you the day before, that day, and tomorrow. So, for example, Calgary, it's difficult to ascertain how many flights have shown up in the last couple of weeks from Calgary to London, but it doesn't appear that that was a thing. When we're talking about Vancouver, we're only talking about a few flights from London to Vancouver. But when we're talking about Toronto or Montreal, we're talking about 2 to 4 flights a day, depending on the city. Montreal, we're talking 2 flights a day, on a busy day 3. When we're talking about Toronto, we're talking about 3 to 4 flights a day. And those were happening up until midnight, Sunday into Monday. Okay, so, it always gets confusing when you say midnight Monday. Okay, are you talking midnight Sunday? Or no, Sunday into Monday is when they banned the flights. There were 2 flights that arrived after that, both Air Canada flights. Both, I'm told, were regularly scheduled flights that came back because they were already in the UK. They flew back with just the crew. I'm told on one of the flights, maybe a bit of cargo, but no passengers, because they're just not sure about this. Now, it's only a 72-hour event, so that should end shortly. I expect this to be extended for a little while, as European countries are doing, as Israel's doing. The United States, not so much, but we're going to see an extension of this as we try and determine, is this a threat to Canada? Do we need to do more? But you know what? A lot of Canadians probably thought the borders were closed because we can't drive over to the United States. We've been told that we can't go to Florida, to Palm Springs, to Arizona, to Texas, anywhere that snowbirds would go. So why are we having all these international flights? Because, Hal, the border never really closed.
Now, Brian, let's talk a bit about the vaccines for just a moment, whether it's Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna. How is Canada faring when it comes to acquiring new COVID-19 vaccines?
Well, we're still waiting on Moderna to be fully approved, and within hours of that, we're told that we could start getting vaccines. Now, when I say hours, we're talking within 48 hours. So let's say, tomorrow morning we wake up, it is approved. Guess what? Within a couple days, we can start getting Moderna vaccines. But right now, we're still dealing with just the Pfizer vaccine. This is the most difficult vaccine to handle. So it depends on which province you're in and how, your province has decided to administer the vaccine. In Quebec, they decided we're going to do, long-term care residents first. And so they sent it to those locations. In Ontario, they said, we will do the long-term care employees, not the residents, because, as Ontario Premier Doug Ford keeps saying, it's not the residents that are bringing in the COVID-19, it's the employees that are out in the community. British Columbia, they've sent it to every single different health region. And in Alberta, they primarily focused on their main research hospitals and going out from there. So it's all going to depend. The simple fact of the matter is, though, we are trailing behind the Americans. So we've had about 25,000 people vaccinated in Canada. The Americans have had more than 500,000 vaccinated. Now, people will say, well, they're 10 times larger. Yes, but they are doing vaccinations at twice the rate that we are at this point. And they've just approved Moderna. We have not. We can expect that to step up over the next little while. So the Americans are going to be vaccinating far more people and at a far greater rate than we are, which means they will get out of this bizarre COVID life we've all been leading faster than we will. That will end the lockdowns, that will end the restrictions, that will end everything that is making life much more difficult, especially as we head towards Christmas at the end of this week.
Brian, during one of his year-end interviews, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made mention of a potential election in 2021. Now, let me ask you something. Was this just a bit of a slip? Are we actually going to the polls next year?
At this point, we don't know. Look, I've been around a lot of minority governments. In fact, most of my career covering federal politics has been around minority governments, and you never know how long they're going to last. But you're right, it was a bit of a, what do they call it, a Freudian slip? He just kind of let slip that, well, Bill Moore, no, he left, he was looking towards the election next year, and whoa, and he kind of caught himself. Did I say election next year? Possible election next year? Simple fact of the matter is we don't know. There's been a lot of talk that the Trudeau Liberals would like to go to the polls. We knew that at one point they wanted to go to the polls in the fall. Then cases started to rise, and they had been talking about doing all these things to revamp the Canadian economy, to use the throne speech, to completely reshape the way the country operates. And Canadians went, whoa, wait a minute. We've got a pandemic going on, focus on that. So they kind of backed off. Then, how are things going on the vaccines? It didn't look good. Now it might look better. So do they want to go? Do the Liberals want to go in the spring? Do the opposition parties want to go? Here's what I can tell you, Hal. After covering the Paul Martin minority government, 2 Stephen Harper minority governments, and now the Trudeau minority government, we will not know until a week or so before. You will start to see trends moving in that direction, but you will not fully know until the vote comes. Because I remember sitting there in 2005 thinking we were going to an election that day, and a vote went, just by one vote, went the other direction. So it's going to be very difficult. You're going to have a lot of pundits, people like myself, people like yourself, saying we're going one way or the other. We don't know. But obviously, an election is on the Prime Minister's mind.
You know what? I think it's on a lot of Canadians' minds, especially with all of the handouts. When it comes to aid, when it comes to COVID-19 and helping a lot of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. So maybe he's thinking, you know what? A few more goodies I'm going to give up before the election. We'll see what happens. Brian, sadly though, unfortunately, a lot of Canadians are struggling with their bills right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many people are working from home. But you recently reported on the fact that more than 50 bureaucrats or civil servants we've never heard of actually have chauffeurs who pick them up and drop them off at work.
Yeah, can you believe that there are more bureaucrats with chauffeurs than there are cabinet ministers? So there are 53, and this is from government documents. They had to table this in the House of Commons after an order paper question from Alberta Conservative MP Chris Warkentin. He asked, well, how many people have this? Turns out it's 53. Now that's less than there used to be, but it's still more than there are cabinet ministers. These are deputy ministers, the chief of the defense staff, people that you might say, well, maybe they could have it, maybe they couldn't. But let me ask you this. Hal, can you tell me who the Superintendent of Financial Services of Canada is? Well, what about the President of the Public Service Commission of Canada? Or the President of the Social Services and Humanities
Wait a minute,
Council?
that one I got that. No, I don't. Sorry.
Now, you don't know any of these people. Unless you're related to them, you probably don't know their name. Even if you work for them, you might be like, oh yeah, my boss. I'm not sure. But they have a car and driver. And I'm not talking about someone that they, a car service that they call up, like a government Uber. No, this is a dedicated full-time chauffeur that picks them up at their house in the morning, drops them off at work, and then waits for them to want to go somewhere else. It's bad enough that we have this for 35 cabinet ministers. We've got it for 53 different bureaucrats, and bureaucrats that, most of whom you couldn't pick out. Britain years ago decided that they were going to get rid of this, except for people that needed it for security reasons and the like. We've still got it for every cabinet minister. In the middle of this pandemic, when we've got small businesses shut down, Mary Ain, the Minister for Small Business, has a car and driver full time. That makes zero sense, but it also makes zero sense that all these bureaucrats have it as well.
Brian, Alberta's top doctor, Dr. Deena Henshaw, has allegedly given her blessing, saying that NHL teams are free to play in our province here in Alberta. But Ontario, they're sitting on the fence, and BC is against it. Will we see a return to play? And if so, maybe it'll be back in Edmonton in another bubble, perhaps?
Yeah, okay, so here's a couple of things going on. We know that Deena Henshaw, the Chief Medical Officer for Alberta, has said, yes, you're fine to play. It's a little bit surprising because Alberta is one of the highest in the country when it comes to active cases per 100,000. Alberta has gone through the roof after doing very well in the first wave, not doing well in the second wave. British Columbia, which is at about half the rate of active cases per 100,000, is said to be on the fence, and they may not allow the Canucks to play in Vancouver with teams visiting from other parts of the country. As you know, the NHL has, as part of their return to play, has said we're going to have 4 different divisions. One of them will be a Canadian division. And so these Canadian teams can't cross the border. Once the players are in, they're in, and they're just going to play each other for the regular season. It's going to be a bit strange, but that requires the federal government to sign off on it. We don't know where they're going to come down, but it also requires each of the provinces to sign off. Alberta is at this point for sure. Quebec and Ontario, we don't know. Manitoba, given their case counts, they're unlikely, and British Columbia is said to be wavering after initially supporting. So we're going to be waiting on tenterhooks for a little while to find out, because we're looking at January 13th as the opening. That means players have to be in place for training camp shortly after Christmas, and we don't know if this is going to go ahead. If it doesn't go ahead, we could see Edmonton and Toronto being bubble cities as they were before. We could just see Edmonton or Toronto being bubble cities, or one or two of the teams moving, depending on what their provincial officials say.
Ontario is going into a massive lockdown just after Christmas on December 26th. Now, why is Premier Doug Ford locking down the entire province, Brian, when he should really be focusing on some of the red zones? I mean, I've read comments, I've talked to people in Northern Ontario, they say, cases are a lot lower here. We're not Toronto, and they're pretty upset about it.
Look, I've been arguing against lockdown since the spring. However, what I can tell you as far as the government's thinking on this goes is that when they have tried the regional approach, what they have seen is that people simply move from one region to the next. And so there's a lot of focus, let's say, on Ottawa, where you and I used to live, where you and I met. And Ottawa, they say, well, we're doing very well and our numbers are low and we don't have to worry. Well, Quebec is about to lock down. Ottawa sits on the Ontario-Quebec border. The city of Ottawa is about 1 million people. Gatineau is about 250,000 across the river. They have a much higher case count across the river. They're worried about people just saying, you know what? The restaurants, the bars, the shopping, it's all closed in Quebec. We're going to Ottawa. That could easily happen. And also, they say the numbers are spiking in the wrong direction in Ottawa at the moment. So the Ontario government's thinking is lock everything down, and within 2 to 4 weeks, start opening up across the province on a much smaller scale. Rather than regional, it will be across the province, and much like Alberta's done with 15 or 20 or 25% of fire code capacity, it could be something like that where they say, all right, you can all open up now, but within limited capacity. Nobody has a great roadmap on this. I will say this, among the major provinces, not counting Atlantic Canada, and across North America and Western Europe, Ontario is actually doing better when it comes to active cases per 100,000 across Canada. When it comes to deaths per 100,000, Ontario is doing very well compared to any comparable jurisdiction, despite having some of the toughest rules, despite having what its critics say are not rules that are tough enough.
And Brian, let's just pray that these lockdowns don't last too long, because it is killing our small business owners. Political reporter Brian Lilly joining me once again from Toronto. Brian, have yourself a merry little Christmas.
And you, Hal. Merry Christmas to you and all your viewers.
In 2019, my dad got really sick from heart condition. 2020 has not made it any easier with all of the COVID restrictions. So he has made a number of trips back to the hospital, just dealing with other health issues. And, you know, we visit on FaceTime because I'm not there. He is in Melfort, Saskatchewan, and I'm here in Lethbridge. So it's good that we're able to talk that way, but like my mom, she is there. She is his main caregiver. She has to, you know, rush him to the hospital and whatnot, but she has to stop at the entrance. She can't even go in there with him to answer the doctor's questions, to help him into his room, you know, because of these COVID measures.
The biggest thing that happened to me in 2020, which really took a lot out of me, was the death of my mom, and it was very sudden. She died of a stroke within 30 minutes of a family member visiting her. So we were all shocked. Even my sister, who was there not even 30 minutes ago. The care home tried to label her as a COVID death, even though she died of a stroke. But they couldn't, and which was a really good thing, because if she was labeled as a COVID death, Ontario laws were saying that she would have to be mandatorily cremated, and that wasn't her wish. So we were able to have her given a proper burial, but the burial, that was surreal as well, because we were all socially distanced, and we couldn't even make contact with any of the funeral staff or any local family, because there were such strict conditions that if we had come into close contact, then those people would have been forced into isolation by Manitoba Health, and those businesses would have had to temporarily shut down for 10 to 14 days.
I think it's really hard this year with COVID, just being away from our kids. We're such a tight family dynamic, and not having our kids here this year is going to be very difficult. But I know a lot of our viewers can relate to this. You know, with COVID keeping families apart, it's really, really difficult, and your heart aches, doesn't it, honey?
Yeah, I mean, it's especially hard this year because we had a loss in the family. We lost our nephew, so that on top of not having the kids here or being with the kids is just makes it extra hard.
2020 has been a really weird year because I've barely seen my mother all year, right? Like we've hardly seen her. She lives here in town, but I mean, we've seen her like maybe 5-10 times because she's very immunocompromised. So she's very, very extremely careful about coming over and visiting and stuff. So she won't come over. So that was true of Thanksgiving. We had a very small, quiet Thanksgiving, and Christmas will probably be much the same. Unfortunately, it's sad. I would love to spend time with my mama, but I think a lot of us are in the same boat, right?
We started off on our honeymoon, and we were in Puerto Rico, and then we were hopping on a cruise ship, and so we weren't watching any TV from the time we left here, and everything sort of blew up when we got back to Orlando.
Well, no, everything happened while we were at sea. So basically the world shut down while we were out at sea, right? And they wouldn't allow us to disembark back in Puerto Rico, where we were supposed to have 4 more days. And we had a hotel booked and we had a flight booked out of there. So Puerto Rico basically shut down, wouldn't let us in. And so we had to spend a couple more days on the ship. So the captain decided to take us to Florida.
We had 2 free days on the cruise ship. It was awesome.
Yeah, it actually wasn't bad, but it was kind of crazy. And then once we got to Florida, Florida did let us in. They let us disembark, but it was pretty much shut down.
No, the beaches were packed.
The beaches were packed?
The beaches were packed. Orlando was a ghost town.
The town was dead.
Yeah,
so
when all the amusement parks are closed, Orlando is not the place to go.
This one day at preschool, this man in a red suit comes in, and we're all excited because it's like, clearly it's Santa Claus, and oh my goodness, he has like a bunch of gifts for each and every one of us, hey? And then it was my turn to go, and I was just not having it. No, I like started getting pretty upset and crying, you know, like many kids in their first experience with Santa Claus, you know, this strange man. I mean, you want the gift, but stranger danger, wasn't sure what to do. Anyway, I do remember him being gentle and like soft-spoken and just, giving me the gift, and I like took it, just not sure what to expect. But yeah, that was actually my first encounter with Santa Claus.
I know, like when your mom passed, a lot of people referenced how she would do Christmas. That she would decorate the house. I think it was referred to as Santa's workshop,
really
right?
was.
So that's kind of a really neat memory. And I got to meet her too, and I got to see Santa's workshop. So that was really kind of special.
Production.
Very special.
Christmas has always been a difficult time because I actually lost my dad on December 23rd over 15 years ago. So Christmas has always been a little bit of a difficult time for me, but all my life has been my favorite time of the year. Setting up the Christmas tree, which I set up a Christmas tree for the first time in probably about like 7 or 8 years, and that really brought so much joy into my home. With the restrictions, I was planning to visit my sister up in Edmonton. I don't think that's going to be a possibility now. Her and her husband may make a trip down to Lethbridge to visit me because I live alone and I'm allowed to have 2 guests. So we're going to see how that happens. Otherwise, like it'll probably just be me and my fur daughter, and we'll just pig out on some Christmas candies and binge watch like all the Christmas movies.
I think a special memory for us was going to Niagara Falls, taking the kids when they were little, seeing it all lit up in such beautiful colors. And hey, honey, when it was partially frozen as well, a lot of the ice from the falls.
Walking around, seeing all the colors in the ice, and just
That was really nice.
Thrill of it all.
It was.
We decided this year, ourselves and 2 other couples that are friends of ours decided, you know what, as bad as 2020's going, we're all still doing pretty good. And so we adopted a family this year with family services, and it was, we don't get to meet the family, but it's something that we'll probably do ongoing now, because and then you see the list of what people are seeking for. From, and it's very humbling, the things they're asking for.
Yeah, especially when it's a single mom and all she wants is a warm blanket for Christmas. Yeah. And then,
And the ladies went shopping for the kids, and they got everything on the list, so it was awesome.
Christmas is a time where I get to be with my family. I'm out here in Lethbridge by myself. I have a great support system of friends. I love them dearly. But Christmas is the time where I get to go home and be with my mom and dad, my brothers and their family. And we get together, we play games, and we laugh a lot. And that is what Christmas is for me.
What's amazing too is that we remember that Jesus is the true meaning for the season, and we'll still celebrate his birth. And the government, nobody can cancel Christmas, okay? We're going to still celebrate Christmas in a very special way. We set up our memory Christmas tree. We have ornaments from the Spirit of Christmas in Banff. Every year we go there and pick that up. We have some ornaments from the kids when they were little that they created. A special ornament of Julie's father who passed away, my dad who passed away. And it's a very special memory tree that we enjoy each and every year here.
I like Mary Kalikimaka, so wise.
I think we like all of the songs that are in Christmas Vacation, because Here Comes Santa Claus is good too. Those are fun songs. I like the boppier songs more than the quiet, slow ones.
For spiritual, I really like Oh Holy Night.
I would say my favorite Christmas carol is O Come All Ye Faithful. And it just brings back so many memories of us singing that during midnight mass. And so with my family, my dad was actually a clergyman. So we would actually go to midnight mass on December 24th. And we would also open our presents after midnight mass. So for me as a 7-year-old, with my dad preaching up on the pulpit, he's delivering a message, looking down at his 7-year-old son, looking up at the ceiling, staring at other people, writing jokes in his head and laughing at them, and pulling faces at the people that he doesn't really recognize. Because for me, like as a 7-year-old, an hour and a half services literally feels like 4 hours when you've got a tree full of presents waiting for you to be opened. But one thing about O Come All Ye Faithful is it always brought a tear to my mom's eye, and for some reason I just like felt this like warmth inside of me as we were singing it.
One of my most favorite Christmas carols is Joy to the World, because of its message. Like, Christ brought joy to the world, and I think especially during this time where I think a lot of people start really reflecting on the year and, you know, what it's been for them, you can really easily slip into, I think, a dark place. And Christ brings the light, and he brings the joy to our souls.
Jesus is the reason for the season, so it doesn't matter COVID, whatever's going on in the world.
Yeah.
That's not going away. He's our everything. So.
We'll never take the Christ out of Christmas. Amen.
Sweet.